One of the biggest sleepers in the sport for me this upcoming season, the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, this is a team that I am wildly bullish on. Now, I'm not going as far as to say, oh, lock them in. They're an SEC championship contender. I'm not there yet, but I am closer today than I was a month ago. And I am feeling like the momentum and the trajectory of this Oklahoma team this year is only going to get going as we get closer and closer to the summer and then ultimately to the season. A lot of the buzz surrounds what they have offensively. They bring back so much of what they had offensively last year. 78% of their offense returns. That's the sixth highest returning production on the offensive side. Surprisingly, given all the big personalities they lost on defense, they bring back 60% of their defensive production, which I thought would be well below 50, just knowing some of the key pieces that have been there forever. Those guys moving on now to the NFL draft, I just thought the defensive numbers and the productivity on that side would be down considerably. But overall, they bring back 69% of their production, which is a pretty good place to start when taking into account they need to make a jump here in Brent Venables' third year. There's a lot of buzz that's building around this team because of what they've now added offensively. Let's start with Ben Arbuckle, the new offensive coordinator. Did a great job of guiding Washington State over the last couple of years, developed multiple quarterbacks like Cam Ward and most recently John Mateer. So to know that he's done it now with two different guys and the production didn't drop off and the personnel that they had at receiver and the personnel they had along the O-line and at running back, it's not like that was all-world personnel. Rock solid, good players, but not all-world personnel by any stretch. So Arbuckle, the last 2 years, has done more with less if you remove the quarterback from the equation. The good news is that quarterback that he relied upon last season, he's going to be with them there in Norman, Oklahoma. It's John Mateer. He comes over having thrown for over 3,100 yards and nearly 30 touchdowns last year. He had just 7 picks, so a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio is rock solid, but it's his legs that become a real problem as well. He rushed for over 800 yards and 15 scores. So he was kind of a one-man show last year. It worked out there in the former Pac-12 against the teams that he played against. And if you look at the teams that they had to play last year, it's not like it was a murderer's row. It wasn't. But I think it translates to the SEC. How well will it translate? We'll find out. I don't know what's bigger, bringing in Arbuckle or Mateer, but the fact that you brought both together was a huge coup for Brent Venables. All their production at running back is back too, so they're going to be able to run the ball with Sawchuk, Javonte Barnes, Xavier Robinson. These are guys that have all done an awful lot. Now, they probably need to do a little bit more from the running back spot. They were not outrageously productive, but they have not really committed to the run the way I think they could commit to the run this year, depending on what kind of looks they get defensively. You still get Deion Burks, who's a game-changing wide receiver, was banged up most of last year. He's still there, and they still have other pieces there on the outside that you got to feel pretty good about. You look at where they're at last year, too, the run game, I've thought back forever. I mean, dating back to Lincoln Riley, before that, the Bob Stoops teams of 20 years ago. When was the last time you saw Oklahoma that did not rank in the top 75 nationally in run yards rushing? Like that's not going to happen. Last year, they rushed for just 155 yards a game. They were 95th in yards per carry at under 4 yards per carry. So that was the worst we've seen from an Oklahoma team in over 15 years. So I'm pretty optimistic that this group is going to be better running the football, partly because of their quarterback, the presence of a real passing game downfield, good personnel at wide receiver, and improvement along the offensive line. The O-line was a huge problem last year, but it was kind of understandable. Going into last year, they had to replace all 5 starters. The continuity was never great. It took them forever to figure out who their best 5 were. So they made that a huge point of contention this offseason, went out and attracted Western Carolina transfer Derek Simmons. Should be the guy that's probably going to start at either right tackle or left. They also brought in one of the top high school tackles in the country in Michael Fasusi, who could start as early as day 1. So I think they have addressed the offensive line concerns from a year ago and have upgraded that position already. And where they were last year, there's only one direction really to go with consistency, and that's up. I think they'll be better up front for Ben Arbuckle and their quarterback, John Mateer. On defense, a decent amount of guys that are back. Now, they return 11 of the 19 guys that played 200 plus snaps, but they also went out and brought in some very intriguing personnel in the transfer portal. Last year, this time of year, we were talking an awful lot about the defensive end from Florida State, formerly of Georgia, Marvin Jones. I thought he had a chance to really be a difference maker for the Seminoles. It never really materialized, but maybe now in his final opportunity to make a statement at the college level, maybe he finally gets it done for the Sooners this year. Another guy I also loved who they brought in was from Oklahoma State. It's Kendall Daniels. He plays off the ball linebacker. I think he's got some athleticism. I think he's got some speed. But it is still weird for me to think of a guy going from OSU, Oklahoma State, to Oklahoma and playing at both those schools. Probably the only guy to ever do that, it feels like. But either way, Kendall Daniels, Marvin Jones, really good, solid additions via the transfer portal. They need to be a little bit better at corner. They need to be a little bit better in the back end overall. But I do like some of their young players that are coming up to the developmental program. I think a guy like Eli Bowen or Jacoby Johnson, Gentry Williams, if those guys can take a step, that'd be big for the entire defense, because now you feel confident enough putting those guys on islands at the risk of potentially trying to heat up the opposing quarterback. The schedule's a gauntlet. There's no denying that. The schedule's very, very tough. And it's not ever going to be easy in the SEC, but there's reason to believe that Oklahoma can make a little noise if they can get off to a pretty decent start. You look at the game against Michigan, that game's at home. It's the second week of the season. If they can get that one at home, it'd be huge. Then they have an opportunity to get Auburn again. That's at home. That's on September 20th. Then a couple weeks later, neutral site game, that's against the Texas Longhorns. If they could somehow find a way to give Texas all they want, take care of Auburn, take care of Michigan, that'd be massive, because then you're looking at a pretty decent back half of the schedule that's tough, including some very difficult road games like to South Carolina, to Tennessee, to Alabama, and then at home you get Ole Miss and you get LSU. So the schedule's brutal. That's why the win total's at just 6.5. But I think this is a team that if they can get off to a really fast start in September, they'll be able to carry over some of that momentum into October and November to become a real problem down the stretch for a lot of teams.